What's up, everybody? Chris Pennell here. We're going my quarterback tier rankings for week 14 of the fantasy football season. If you enjoy, make sure you leave a like down below. Subscribe to the channel if you're brand new. Let's dive right into it. And really quick, I do want to mention that we do have two teams on bye this week, and that'll be the Arizona Cardinals and the Washington Commanders. Yes, two serviceable quarterbacks in Kyler Murray and Sam Howell, but we're not going to be missing any heavy hitter elite options this week. And that'll be it for the bye weeks this season. As we head into our fantasy football playoffs, it'll be all systems go from here on out. And as always, we'll start with the S tier. We have three guys that are going to make the cut this week. Probably the three you would expect, at least I would think. We're going to start with number one. That's going to be Jalen Hurts of the Philadelphia Eagles. And number two, we have Josh Allen. Both guys have pretty similar play styles. And if you're looking at their numbers this season, honestly, not too far off. Jalen Hurts, not as much upside through the passing game, but he can make that up with what he can do on the ground. But for the season, Jalen Hurts at 250, over 1.5 passing touchdowns, throwing the ball roughly 30 times per game and 7.4 yards per attempt. What we love about Jalen Hurts is what he does on the ground. 7 designed runs per game. That is not including scrambles. Very easy for him to get double-digit rushing attempts every single week. 1 rushing touchdown per game, which is amazing for a quarterback. Whenever they get around the goal line, inside the 5-yard line, the tush push is coming, and it's more than likely going to work. I don't love the matchup versus Dallas. 13th versus quarterbacks, but Geno Smith did just cover them up on Thursday Night Football. From a medium projection standpoint, his floor on the ground is going to keep him unmatched with any other quarterback. And Josh Allen is pretty close to him. He's averaging 0.75 rushing touchdowns per game on nearly 30 rushing yards. Not as many designed runs, but the scrambles are always going to be there. And he's a little bit more passing upside, considering he's averaging nearly 270 passing yards per game and 2 passing touchdowns. So I love both options. And if you have them, congrats, you have a top 2 quarterback this week. And this game is going to be good. I love Buffalo versus Chiefs games. They always tend to be bangers. This is on the road in Arrowhead, which I would prefer it's at home for Josh Allen, but a 47.5 over-under in this game. No concerns about it whatsoever. And then we have Dak Prescott cracking the S tier this week. This game features a 52.5 over-under in between Jalen Hurts and Dak Prescott. Prescott gets the much easier matchup as the Philadelphia Eagles are dead last versus quarterbacks, allowing 24.2 points per game, 280 passing yards, and 2.25 passing touchdowns. And Brock Purdy just had a field day versus this defense on the road in Philly. Dak Prescott at home in Dallas in prime time, 28-point implied team total, 270 passing yards per game, and over 2 passing touchdowns. This passing offense has been cooking. Dak Prescott has looked like an MVP out there in recent months, so no reason not to have him in the S tier this week. The only bad thing with Dak Prescott, especially in primetime games, is that we're going to have to listen to his annoying cadence once again. Yeah, here we go, about 60 times, so that'll be fun. But other than that, I do like Dak. Moving on to the A tier. We have a couple of good quarterbacks here. We have Tua leading us off. It's a good matchup versus Tennessee's pass defense, who we've seen teams be able to throw in them in recent weeks. And Tua should have no problem here at home. 30.25 implied team total, which is the highest of the week. 13.5 point spread in their favor. So the concern is that they get to a big lead. They just on the rock with Juan Chan, Raheem Mostert, or Jeff Wilson, whoever it may be, here in the second half. But either way, 290 passing yards per game, 2 passing touchdowns, 8.7 yards per attempt, and your life is very easy when you have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle to get the ball to. And then we have Patrick Mahomes, who's definitely not been QB1 this year, where you were drafting him. And overall, the numbers this season aren't super impressive. Like, they're good. 260 passing yards, nearly 2 passing touchdowns, throwing the ball over 34 times per game. But outside of Travis Kelce, who's certainly aging, there is no weapons in this offense. Rashee Rice has definitely established himself as the wide receiver 1 in this offense, but man, it is just a heap of garbage that he's getting the ball to, so it's unfortunate. But I think they're going to get up for this game versus Buffalo. Like I said, a pretty high over-under, 2.5 point spread in the Chiefs' favor, 25-point implied team total. And the Buffalo Bills on the season, 12th versus fantasy quarterback, so it's not an amazing matchup, but Mahomes is still the most talented quarterback in the league. It's just he is dealing with a shortage of weapons at this point, but I think he can overcome it for this game. And if you can get 275 and 2, which is pretty close to his lines over in Vegas, I think he'll be happy with that production. Then we have Lamar Jackson of the Baltimore Ravens, and he's kind of in that Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts range of rushing upside. He just doesn't give you as many rushing touchdowns. He's not as big of a body as those guys around the goal line, but he can still get there. 50 rushing yards per game, over 5 designed runs, again, not including scrambles, 0.4 rushing touchdowns per game. Doesn't offer you a ton through the air, 220 passing yards and just over 1 passing touchdown, but it's a pretty good matchup versus the Rams, who are currently 18th versus quarterbacks. We're also playing at home in Baltimore, 24-point implied team total, 7.5 point favorite. As long as we get the rushing upside that Lamar Jackson offers us, we'll be fine with the production. And then rounding out our A tier, we have Brock Purdy of the 49ers, and this guy is now your MVP favorite in the NFL. I believe he's plus 300, plus 350 on most books. So moved ahead of Jalen Hurts, moved ahead of Patrick Mahomes, Tua, all those guys. And honestly, I get it. I don't know if he's a system quarterback or if he is a system quarterback and he's talented at the same time. Either way, it is working out for that team. He might not be the most talented guy out there, but he knows how to run that off. That's all that matters. For fantasy purposes, he's been really good as well. He gets a really nice matchup versus Seattle Seahawks at home in San Francisco, 28.5 implied team total, which is the second highest of the week. 10.5 point favorites. And if you're looking at his numbers this year, they don't throw the ball a ton, only 25 times per game, but he is uber efficient, putting over 70% of his passes 9.6 yards per attempt, which is better than any quarterback that we have talked about so far. Actually, the best quarterback on this list. 265 passing yards, nearly 2 passing touchdowns. Doesn't turn the ball over too much. And the Seahawks are currently 20th versus quarterbacks. He has great weapons. Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, they're amazing out there. George Kittle, one of the most athletically gifted tight ends in the NFL. They have Christian McCaffrey in the backfield, which is one of his downsides, is they could just give CMC the ball around the goal line, or he can just do all the dirty work anyway. But he's also a threat in the passing game, which also helped Brock Purdy. Great offensive line, great team overall. No reason not to like Brock here, so he doesn't have quite the name values the guys we talked about. Honestly, he could lead the A tier here, and I wouldn't be too shocked about it. Moving on to the B tier. We don't have many guys, just 2 here, but we have Justin Fields of the Chicago Bears, and this guy has multiple 100-plus rushing yards game versus the Detroit Lions. Whatever it is, he likes playing this team. They have struggled versus mobile quarterbacks this season, and while Justin Fields is not a great NFL quarterback, he's pretty good for fantasy purposes, averaging 50 rushing yards per game, over 6 designed runs. He's obviously a threat to get into the end zone, and Detroit is currently 29th versus quarterbacks this season, so we're playing at home. I expect a big day on the ground for Justin Fields, and they have struggled versus wide receivers recently, so it could be a big day for DJ Moore as well. Unfortunately, I have CJ Stroud here in the B tier, and while I think he's an A tier type player, the loss of Tank Dell is definitely a big hit to this offense because that was his #1 guy, although Nico Collins filled in quite nicely, nearly 200 yards and got into the end zone, so I don't think Stroud's going to be completely dust here. This game features a 32.5 over-under, which is the second lowest of the week, only behind the Thursday night game with the Patriots and the Steelers, 2 backup quarterbacks. Really just backups in general. It's basically 2 AAA teams facing off that has a 30.5 over-under. 6.5 point spread in the Texans' favor on the road in New York, or New Jersey, I guess, wherever that stadium is. 19.5 implied team total. And Stroud's been amazing this year. No doubt about that. Just under 300 passing yards per game. 8.5 yards per attempt. Pretty brutal matchup through the air versus the New York Jets, as they're currently allowing the 4th fewest points per game at 14.5 and only 192 passing yards as well, and barely over passing touchdowns. So I don't love the matchup here, but I think he's still talented enough to be in the B range for me. And then rounding out our C tier, we have Justin Herbert of the Los Angeles Chargers coming off a pretty bad game versus the New England Patriots in Foxborough. 6-0. That game had no touchdowns, just 2 field goals. Chargers won it, but overall very ugly. But I expect a bit of a better game here versus the Broncos, who have been playing much better football in recent weeks. And while they are 22nd versus quarterbacks, like I said, the defense has sharpened up a bit over the past couple months now. Still a 23-point implied team total for the Chargers, 43.5 over-under, 2.5 point spread in their favor. 250 passing yards, throwing the ball over 34 times per game. Not really going down the field a ton, though, only 6.9 yards per attempt, but we do know Herbert is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Not that it's always, he's going to be one of the best fantasy quarterbacks, but the upside is certainly there for him. But I think he's good enough to be in the B range this week. And we're going to move on to the C tier, and we have Jared Goff of the Detroit Lions. I much prefer him at home. That's why I have him all the way down in the C tier, because we know this offense can put up points, but if you look at his home road splits for the past couple of seasons, definitely in favor over in Ford Field. Only a 21.75 implied team total for the Lions this week, which is pretty low compared to their average over the past few weeks. 3-point spread in their favor. And Goff's been good this year, 275 passing yards, over 1.5 passing touchdowns. He's got great weapons. Jahmyr Gibbs out of the backfield, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Jameson Williams has explosive upside. Josh Reynolds is okay. Sam Laporta has been amazing for his rookie season at tight end. And the Bears are currently 24th versus quarterbacks. So it's a little bit easier to pass on them than it is to run on them. So I'm fine with Jared Goff as a low-end QB1 or upper-end QB2 this week, but I don't think he's going to have a ton of upside. Next for me is Russell Wilson, the Denver Broncos. Decent week last weekend versus the Houston Texans. Almost won the game at the end, unfortunately, threw a pick, but it's a pretty good matchup versus the Los Angeles Chargers, and we're on the road, so we're in the dome. Don't have to worry about any weather concerns there. And the Chargers have been awful versus the pass this season, allowing the 5th most points per game in the quarterback position at 20.9, 290 passing yards, and nearly 1.5 passing touchdowns. And while the yardage hasn't been great for Russell Wilson this season, averaging just under 200 yards per game, he's been close to 2 passing touchdowns despite only 25 pass attempts. And you're getting 25 yards on the ground as well, so there's a little bit of a floor baked in, 2 to 3 points, which is nice. But always the chance of a rushing touchdown. So I like him quite a bit in this matchup. And if you're looking for a streamer this week, like if Kyler Murray was your starting quarterback or Sam Howell and Russell Wilson's still out there on waivers or he's your backup, I would feel pretty confident in him this week. Then we have Jordan Love of the Green Bay Packers. He's actually been playing some pretty decent football the past couple of weeks. A great game versus the Kansas City Chiefs. And it was supposed to be a pretty tough game for them, but they got the win. And then also got another win on the road in Detroit on Thanksgiving Day. Tore up that Detroit Lions defense. Now, Christian Watson, unfortunately, got hurt late in that game. So that would be a big blow if he's going to be out. But he still has Romeo Doubs. Jaden Reed's look good. And it's not going to take too much, I think, to beat up on this Giants pass defense. So I'm fine with Love as another streaming option this week. Then we have Joshua Dobbs of the Minnesota Vikings. And it looks like we are getting Justin Jefferson back this week. And when you can get the best wide receiver in the NFL back in the lineup, doesn't mean best fantasy wide receiver at this point because you don't have Kirk Cousins. That's obviously going to be a big hit. Tyreek Hill has that status as of right now. But talent-wise, Justin Jefferson is my numero uno. And Dobbs has been pretty good for fantasy purposes this year. Now, if you just try to forget what happened versus the Bears in that primetime game, it was absolutely dreadful. 4 interceptions in that one. Justin Fields was trying to match him in turnovers as well. It was just really ugly overall. But I'm not scared about this matchup versus the Raiders. I know overall this year they're allowing the 10th fewest points per game to position. They've really given up versus the run. But I'm not overly concerned about it. Nearly a 22-point implied team total here for the Vikings offense, which is actually right on par with Jordan Love's team this week, right above Jared Goff, and also above the Denver Broncos. And we have rushing upside with Joshua Dobbs. He's getting you nearly 40 yards per ground in the game and half a rushing touchdown. He's been a touchdown scoring machine on the ground this season. You have TJ Hawkinson, one of the best tight ends in football, Justin Jefferson, KJ Osborne, Jordan Addison. He's got all the weapons he can handle. I think he's a fine option this week if you are in a pinch with a bye week. And moving on to the D tier, we have quite a bit of a drop off here. Hopefully you don't have to start anybody in this range. If you're in a 12, 10, 18 team league, you should have no reason at all to start anyone below the C tier this weekend. If you were like me and you were in an 18 team league, I had to start Jake Browning last week. Now, obviously that worked out fine. I was not expecting that to happen, but you have to do some really dirty things in deep leagues like that. So I do feel for the people that are looking at the DNF tier this week. But we have 2 guys here. We're going to have Baker Mayfield and Geno Smith. Obviously not the best quarterbacks in the world, but they have decent weapons, so that keeps them fantasy relevant. Baker Mayfield always has that 215-2 upside every single week. He's averaging on the season 230 and 1.5 passing touchdowns. So it's a bit of a coin flip. Is he going to throw 1 touchdown? Is he going to throw 2? You're never really sure, but it is a good matchup versus Atlanta. They are 21st versus quarterbacks, and whenever you have Mike Evans, you're always going to have touchdown upside around the goal line, and we saw that 75-yard touchdown last week. So that's going to keep him afloat. And Geno Smith, big game in a tough matchup versus the Dallas Cowboys, but ended up balling out. Now, I'm not expecting that versus the 49ers. They're only 5th fewest points per game to the position. But if Geno can get you 250 and 2, like that's the baseline once we get below the C tier, you're going to be happy with it. Now, I don't have that projected on the season. He's averaging 240. 1.25, but again, this is very slim pickings at this point, and at least he has good weapons. Then moving on to the F tier. It's getting really ugly, but we have Jake Browning of the Cincinnati Bengals. 1 on the road in Jacksonville, who's one of the best teams in the AFC this year. Massive win, massive touchdown to Jamar Chase. Overall, a great day, well over 300 passing yards, multiple passing touchdowns. Could not believe it. And he gets a decent spot here versus the Colts, who are currently 19th versus quarterbacks. So we know Jake Browning has a great offense to get the ball to. I mean, you have T. Higgins, who's healthy. He's back. Jamar Chase is one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. Tanner Hudson has not looked too bad. Joe Mixon was decent out of the backfield. You also have Tyler Boyd out there, Trenton Irwin. So if you are in a really tough spot this week, like in my 18-team league, I have Jake Browning and I have Joshua Dobbs. And honestly, I'm not sure who I want to start. I'm probably going to start Dobbs. That's why I have projected better, but Browning is somewhat tempting because I have Jamar Chase and it completes my stack. Gardner Minshew on the other side of this game, I'm fine with it. Not super scared of the Bengals defense. They're currently 25th versus quarterbacks. Before Trevor Lawrence died last week, he was having a great game. So I'm fine with him as a spot start. Threw a couple of touchdowns last week to Alec Pierce and Michael Pittman. Matthew Stafford, he's on here just because he has good weapons in Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. Nacua did get hurt, had a nice 80-yard touchdown last week. Cooper Kupp also got into the end zone his first double-digit fantasy day in quite some time. Tough matchup here versus Baltimore. They're allowing the fewest points per game and they're on the road. So I really have no high expectations for Stafford, but I'm just not really sure who else is going to be above him. So he's going to be listed here. Then Derek Carr hit his head last week, so we'll see if he's going to play or not. If he does, 21.5 implied team total this week, 5.5 points spread at home versus Carolina. And while they're much worse versus the run than they are versus the pass, allowing the 2nd fewest points per game, at least he has Alvin Kamara out of the backfield and Chris Olave to get the ball too, but that's really about it. With that being said, that's all I got for today's video, so I hope you enjoyed. If you did, make sure you like down below, subscribe to the channel if you're brand new. If you have any questions, leave them down below. More than happy to answer them, but I wish you all the best of luck in whatever you're doing. I'll see you all next time.